This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is Stuart Gordon's Castle Freak, which is a remake coming up. So that's the reason why I watched this movie. And plus, it was done by Stuart Gordon, who, as I mentioned in my reaction video to the remake, has done more interpretations of H.P. Lovecraft's work than any other director that I'm aware of, certainly. And Castle Freak is based upon H.P. Lovecraft's The Outsider, and it's essentially another animal entirely. It takes a lot of liberties with Lovecraft's original story. It expands its scope quite a bit and turns it into something more traditional. But that being said, if you've read The Outsider, you probably realize while it is something that can be filmed, it would be another movie entirely. The Outsider would be more of a character piece, in that if you have not read the story, it revolves around this being who's trapped, I guess, in a crypt. Lovecraft's writing is very descriptive, and so in the instance of this particular story, I found it hard to get a feel for where this person actually is. So eventually they make their way out of this crypt or necropolis and discover that they are not who they think they are. Well, I should say he keeps the kernel of that idea, which is to say we have a being who is shunned, who is somehow different than everyone around him. But he starts off in this movie, like in Lovecraft's story, seemingly imprisoned. But from there it goes on to a somewhat traditional horror story, using who I think is one of Stuart Gordon's muses, who is Jeffrey Combs. Essentially, Jeffrey Combs plays someone who has inherited a castle in Italy, and along with his wife and daughter go to it with the intention of selling it, while this being resides within it, though no one is aware of it because the caretaker, who treated him abysmally, by the way, and it's not quite explained why, but she did. And so she dies, and this being eventually escapes. One way that it differs significantly from H.P. Lovecraft's story is that it becomes an ensemble piece, which is to say it's no longer about the creature, or from the creature's perspective for that matter. Instead, it revolves more around Combs and his family and the trauma that they've undergone with the recent death of one of their children. And so what happens in the movie is directly affected by that event. It's an interesting story, kind of titillating in ways that Lovecraft never was, which is to say nudity, female nudity particularly. And so it's typical Stuart Gordon, which is to say a bit exploitative, very gory, very practically gory. Well, 1995, there wasn't much in the way of CGI. And it's an interesting movie. It's not The Outsider by Lovecraft, to be sure, but it takes what's at the heart of that story, a being who's been isolated and alienated and is seeking to understand what it means to be a person, and kind of runs with that notion. It's not inaccurate to Lovecraft, though it is certainly not the same. And when I made my reaction video to the reboot of Castle Freak, I was wondering, would the reboot try to capture the essence of H.P. Lovecraft's story, or would it be a remake of Stuart Gordon's Castle Freak? And having read H.P. Lovecraft's story and watched Stuart Gordon's Castle Freak, I definitely think it's the latter, because just from the trailer alone, it seems to expand upon the notion of Stuart Gordon's movie. And there are also scenes which implied some type of cult-like activities as well. So it definitely uses Stuart Gordon and his movie as a template to build upon. as opposed to taking H.P. Lovecraft's story and building upon that. In any case, it's something I definitely want to see because I enjoy not only the work of Stuart Gordon, but H.P. Lovecraft as well, and to see how someone else interprets that would be really interesting. In any case, what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.